Yeah, I think the party conference is a very good thermometer of how's the party doing. And when you're on the verge of coming into office, then everything is incredibly slick and smooth and everyone flocks to your conference. And when things are going disastrously wrong, it usually falls apart at the party conference. And there are certain indicators. You've given a few. I would say a good indicator is whose fringe speeches are getting the biggest audiences. Where are the queues forming to get into these little conference halls? So we should explain to people there's a main speech going on usually in a big hall, but it's a conference centre. There'll be lots of little rooms and there'll be lots of side events happening at lunchtime and in the evening. And of course here Liz Truss turned up, the only one of the former Tory leaders I'm aware of who turned up at the party conference.
About an hour before Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, was going to make his speech.
Absolutely.
It was astonishing.
By the way, Ed, one of my first jobs in politics was to look after Margaret Thatcher at Tory party conferences, which shows A, how old I am, and B, what a nightmare that was, because she used to turn up, all the tension was on her, and it completely overshadowed whatever William Hague, who was then the Tory leader, was trying to say or do.
I was talking to Eric Pickles, who I worked with closely on the Holocaust Foundation. He said his early job back in those days in the 80s was to sit next to Dennis Thatcher to make sure that he didn't laugh, clap or stand up in inappropriate moments when dodgy people were making dodgy speeches from the conference hall.
My main task was also to avoid Margaret Thatcher bumping into Ted Heath, who, believe it or not, was also at the conference back then. So Liz Truss turning up, she made a stir. But
there were big queues. All snaking through the conference
surprise,
centre.
It wasn't Liz Truss who stole the limelight. It was Nigel Farage. I hate even bringing his name up, but unfortunately,
he was there because he was a GB News presenter, so he had a reason to be there. He wasn't just there to go to the Tory conference.
As always with Nigel Farage, the thing he's associated with is usually imploding. In this case, GB News, but he, merges scot-free, and he's a sort of Pied Piper character, and he's leading the Tory party, to his merry tune again. And you would have thought the party had learnt, but
all these people kept popping up. Tom Tugendhat, Rishi Sunak saying, "Well, of course, we'd welcome Nigel Farage back into the Conservative Party fold." Really?
Well, I think there's a very interesting question. If, and it's a big if, but if Nigel Farage was given back membership of the Conservative Party, if he applied, there's no indication he would apply, but if he applied to be a member of the Conservative Party, that would definitely go, by the way, straight to Rishi Sunak's desk.
Well, he said yes, hasn't he? He basically gave him a tick.
Well, then, you have opened the door to Faragism inside the Tory party, not led by its proxies, but by Nigel Farage himself.
Faragism. Look, we saw Nigel Farage dancing with Priti Patel. We heard Suella Braverman's speech to the conference. We know what Liz Truss was saying. Faragism is now alive and well within the Conservative Party.
It's not inconceivable that if the Conservative Party lost the general election, and if Nigel Farage had rejoined as a Tory party member, he doesn't even necessarily have to be a Tory MP, then he could be a potential future leader of the Conservative Party.
Why have Farage light when you can have the real thing?
Right. Well, that is definitely condemning the Tory party to many, many years in the wilderness if that happens.
I mean, do you think this might be finally Nigel Farage's way into Parliament? Because he stood, I think, seven times. Is it 7 times to be a candidate from a small party? In our system, it's very hard to get elected from one of the small outsider parties. But if Nigel Farage did become a Conservative member this year and he wanted to have a seat, he could get a seat late and bing, bang, bong.
Well, as Donald Trump demonstrates in the United States, it is far easier to take over one of the main parties than to run for a small party or as an independent. And this may well be Farage's route. I mean, I certainly hope fervently as a member of the Tory party myself that is not.
How would you feel about it?
I would be appalled by it. But
if you and David Cameron having a chat about
we would be appalled by it, of course. But but I think we would stand and fight.
You wouldn't just be appalled by it. You'd do something.
I think it's probably not unlike how you have felt when Jeremy Corbyn was leader of the Labour Party. And that is another example of entryism, where Corbyn, instead of standing as a communist or a revolutionary socialist, stood as a Labour MP to be the party leader, became the party leader, and was presented by the Labour Party at 2 general elections. And then the last general election was, as a result, very, very soundly defeated.